Questions? I'm sure there are many questions. There's one in the back already. And Jan is still on the phone with us, so questions for Jan are fine too. He's probably not going to be able to hear you, so I'll repeat the question if it's for Jan.
Those who didn't hear, the question was, what are the premium services that the librarian gets? Well, the librarian gets usage statistics, the librarian gets MARC records for their catalogs, the librarian will get support from our customer service people, they will get training on campus if they wish to have training for how to use our data sets, because that's quite popular. So they will get archive rights to the content. That's the sort of thing that the librarian gets, or the library or the institution gets as part of the subscription. Okay.
Additional question. David.
I've actually got two for Toby. So the first one is, are you just covering your costs, or are you making any kind of surplus that you can feed back into the process?
Okay, the question is, are we making a surplus that we can reinvest in the business? And the answer is yes. All our investment comes from the revenue that we generate.
So not the second question, but is there a percentage there you get a share? I'm interested in what kind of surplus can be generated.
I'm not sure I know that off the top of my head. That's because we don't really account for it in that way. But I can tell you afterwards, if you like, sorts of. I mean, just give some idea. At the moment, we're investing €1 million in a new IT system.
Okay, so my other question is, it's a complex thing to put that freemium model together. Okay, so I'm curious as to how you went about it. Did you have a grand plan at the start, or was this a voyage of discovery? How do you get to the point where you got to?
It was more of a voyage of discovery. We started off by putting 20% of the book free to download in our online bookstore to see what would happen. And after about a year, we thought, well, why don't we make it 100% of the books? So, and we did that back in 2004-05, something like that. And we've sort of just slowly realized that we're doing freemium. It wasn't it was a voyage of discovery, and we're now at the point where it's 100% of our books, most of our data. By the end of this year, it'll probably be all of our data will be in a free environment.
Yeah, Doug.
So given the proportion of readers getting this stuff free, I have to wonder in highly technical disciplines where authors and readers are essentially the same people. You have a large group of readers out there in the world interested in this economic data, but for technical fields and mathematics would be one of them. Do you see the freemium model working in the same way? You can't really get beyond that core group of readers who are, for the most part, also authors. A lot of this is for physics.
Well, I mean, all I can say is refer back to that wonderful presentation we had this morning. There are all these citizens who are doing astronomy and who seem to be getting interested. So I don't know is the answer, but I do feel that I mean, if publishers went freemium, why would there be green open access? I mean, for me, it would just kill green open access overnight. I mean, one thing I didn't mention about green open access is it's imposing a lot of other costs in the system because of all these repositories having to be built. And if the publishers were doing it all, then maybe the repositories wouldn't have to be built. I mean, it's interesting.
Yeah, over there.
This is a question for the LMS. How much of your traffic comes from your partnership with Archive, and have they provided you any usage numbers so you can sort of track how frequent performing
So the question is how much of our traffic is coming from the archive now to the published version, I assume, and are they tracking this? We can track it, but we've only done this for the last few months, so it's far too early to tell. In fact, I think it's only since January that we started looking at the data on this. We haven't approached Archive to see how much usage they're getting on the preprints, but they have been terribly open and very helpful with us. And I think unlike, I mean, I hear stories, whether it's, I always get the names wrong, so I'm going to be embarrassing now, but whether it's PubMed Central or something, the arguments about people not sharing the amount of traffic that goes to these other subject repositories. But I think that the Archive is much more open to these things. I mean, from our point of view, we're not so worried about what the traffic is to the preprint stage, but we will track whether it helps us to get usage to the published version, and I think we've got to give that a couple of years before we get enough data out.
I have a question for you, Susan. Within the mathematics community, is the preprint version sufficient for green OA mandates? Or is there another version that has to sit between the preprint and the final publication, the sort of accepted paper, if you will?
Well, I think that goes with the, so the question is the Archive version sufficient for green open access mandates? There are any number of green open access mandates out there. Many of them are very badly written. I mean, we had huge discussions when the RC UK was setting these things up, because we said you've got to be, the first couple of times they did it, they were completely imprecise about what they meant by green open access. So in some cases, they're still very imprecise. In most cases, most mathematicians assume what you mean is anything up to the accepted manuscript. And we don't know of any governments that at the moment are insisting on putting the version of record in. But some of the discussions which took place yesterday morning, it sounded like people were really pushing towards this. And of course, Ian in his talk was saying, why do you make a difference? So we want to try and keep the distinction, but we have to accept that other people won't necessarily allow us to do that. Generally, the mathematicians aren't fussed.
Yeah, back there.
This is a question for Susan. I'm struck with how, for example, graduate students behave. If the journal was available for free for 6 months, you can download PDF copies of it?
Yeah.
You can download PDF copies.
Yeah.
Just for that reason alone. So,
Yeah, I wish our graduate students were that enthusiastic, but yeah.
you don't really know if, for example, you had a version where they could read.
No, I mean, this is interesting because this is not something we've tried, the freemium model. My skepticism when I was talking to Toby earlier was, surely there must be a way that they can hack into this system, and I wouldn't trust mathematicians not to hack in quite quickly and find a good way around this. In fact, Alex has got plans already by the look of it. So I don't know. We haven't tried that, so I can't judge on whether it would work, but it is an interesting model, and we should look at it. I mean, these are journals which are sitting on Highwire, and Highwire I see are there, and can say about how they do look for robotic downloads, and they do look for when somebody's systematically downloading every article. So we, to some extent, we rely on them to keep that traffic away. But I would really like it if graduate students spent all their time downloading our articles. I thought that would be brilliant.
We started putting disabled PDF files. That was our first form of the read-only experience. And of course, anyone who's got an Acrobat Builder can unpick the system. And did it happen? Maybe. I have no idea. Did it lose us any revenue and sales? Nope. Do we find the internet covered with our books? I wish. I mean, I really do think that does anyone know Hans Rosling? Okay, Gapminder, brilliant. I mean, Google Hans Rosling, see his videos, they're just sensational. He has a wonderful expression for organizations like the one I work for: don't be a data hugger. And I would say to publishers, don't hug your content. Once you publish it online, frankly, it's gone. Okay? So the idea of protecting it seems to me to be rather bizarre, not least if I go right back to the beginning, what's the job of a publisher but to find readers? So I think that the publishers have tended to be far too protective, worrying that people will come and run and with all our content. I mean, this reminds me of the awful publication called Spycatcher, published back in when Thatcher was Prime Minister in England. And this book would have sold probably 10 copies, but she banned it. And so suddenly it was, and I just think, I wish she would ban our books. I mean, anything. But I think that we overestimate sometimes how attractive our publications are. And I think we have to learn to let go. We've got to try these things.
So I have a sort of philosophical question for all three panelists, which I think has some real-world implications. So what all of you are talking about is essentially publishing as a service, right? So moving to a model where readers are paying for services, or in some cases, authors are paying for services. Those services might be complex, some of the complex and very sophisticated text mining that Jan is talking about. It might be some of the library services that you're talking about, Chibi. So if we go back, publishing, especially journal publishing, you could think of that it started out as a service, in that the journal was the solution to having to mail around a bunch of papers, right? And so it was a service for scientists to not have to mail around, who didn't want to have to mail around a bunch of papers. So along the way, have we mistaken contents? Have we essentially mistaken what we're doing as an industry from being a service to a product? Have we lost the service, and has it always been a service industry, and we've just sort of at some point stopped thinking of it as a service and started thinking of it as a product or content as opposed to service?
Well, if I can start on that, I think the thing that's missing there in what you've just said is the business of peer review, because that has always been a part of the service of research journals. It continues to be. Yes, some people find it completely pointless, and in fact, it's somewhat worrying that we have some extremely good mathematicians saying, well, I just do my own peer review, I judge what's good. That's fine. Most people can't do that. They're not in a position to do it. And I think that service of peer review, yes, we don't pay the referees, we pay for the management of peer review. We did consider a little while ago, in the LMS Council, talked about could we possibly do effectively a stamp of authority. This paper has been peer reviewed. We guarantee the LMS that this paper has been peer reviewed to a certain standard. P.S. These proofs are correct. The moment you said to the mathematicians, by the way, are you ready to sign off that this proof is correct? No, run away. So it is that part which I think is missing. Well, still there.
Well, I think that peer review or any sort of review, it's a service for who? And it really is a service for the reader, to shield the reader from rubbish. And I think that sometimes we forget that that's actually the purpose of peer review and the review process. My colleagues, my editorial colleagues, are not the most popular people in the OECD. And why? Is because they keep saying no. We're not going to publish this until it's been tidied up, until it's been improved, until whatever. And why are we doing that? Well, we're protecting our readers and we're protecting our reputation. And that's why we're doing it. So it is a service. I would agree absolutely with Michael that actually what we are a service, and always have been. And perhaps we did sort of lose the plot when we thought actually we're selling content. Well, it's not our content. We didn't actually make the content. The authors made the content. Your turn, Jan.
All right. And Toby and Susan had very eloquent answers. So we will expect the same from you.
He's got it. Yes.
Oh, and pithy. Thank you. Any other questions? One more. Yes.
My question is for Susan. Even as the Journal of Computation Mathematics,
Yeah.
we talked about there's no charge for readers, no charge for the authors.
Yeah.
It's completely subsidized by
Yeah,
Simon.
it's subsidized by the other journals.
I was curious if there's a reason why that's important to that particular community, or why that is.
No, it's partly sort of accidental history. It really comes down to that. We tried on a couple of occasions, and it's a small journal, and we tried a couple of times. We looked at whether we could do a subscription model. I mean, we're still open to different business models. One of the things they're thinking of at the moment is, because it's computation and mathematics, computer science proceedings have got a far higher ranking. They are peer-reviewed, and they are sort of considered far superior to the average sort of proceedings volume. So we're looking at whether we could possibly publish proceedings in the journal, and that would to some extent subsidize it. But at the end of the day, it's where it's at the moment. We recognise that it's a cost to the society. It's also a value to the people who publish in it. And we're making enough money that we can afford to do this sort of thing every now and then in the interest of dissemination. Long term, we would always like to find a model for, because it actually helps the stability of the journal in the long term. If it's not sitting there thinking that it's the poor relative waiting for a handout in the corner, it doesn't do, it somehow then it's considered to be of lesser value. And so we'd like to find a way in which it can feel happy and confident in its future. Yes.
Yes.
Toby, you talked about people in the green and gold model losing their economic voice. Were you talking about the taxpayer? I mean, I don't understand.
So I was talking about the question was who's losing their economic voice in the green and gold model. It's the reader loses their voice, because the reader can say, I want it in this format, I want this tool, I want this, and there's no economic lever there for the publisher or the provider.
The same is true for journals now.
Well, no, because if the subscribers stop subscribing, then the publisher would.
But the reader is not the one who pays.
I know the reader isn't the one who pays, but the reader has an agent who pays on their behalf.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's
so
true.
there is still an economic voice there.
There's very little leverage. I mean,
So,
I'm a librarian.
mhm.
We have very little leverage when we argue with publishers about what they should be doing. So unless we can bring authors in and say, this is what I want, but it's a true divorce from the people who are paying the bill and the people who are using the service.
No, I understand that. At the same time, if a publisher is producing a better service, attracting more readers, you're going to see more traffic and you're more likely to renew that subscription. There is a connection between the service that the publisher is providing for the reader back to the economic model of the journal.
I would argue that that's not really true.
Okay, well, we have to agree to disagree.
I can show you.
I mean, if I take it to the other extreme of your argument, in that case there would have never been any development that the readers wanted on journals over the last 20 years. Well, there's been an enormous development in terms of what the
But
readers
your
want.
audience is not the library, the people who are paying.
No, it's the-
not the economic voice that matters, except to you in that respect.
But
So,
but the mathematicians are.
but the mathematicians are the ones who are reading, and they can say, we think you should do this.
Yeah.
The libraries have no voice.
But you're buying on behalf of the mathematicians, not on
We're
behalf of
buying
yourself.
On behalf of the libraries.
Not for the
And they-
mathematicians.
The readers are the ones, the readers use it, but your primary
No, I have
audience
an odd word.
should be the libraries in terms of not necessarily what you provide, but in terms of the way that it's provided. I mean, I can show you all kinds of examples of ways that get in the way of library function.
You see, I always thought our primary audience was the mathematician, not the library. That's the difference, I think.
Other questions? Yes, Robert.
We're here as a representative of the other mathematics. I'm actually a little bit confused by that language. To me, if the services are about what language, content is what reading.
But we are, if you look at, for instance, my title, this directive of public and access services.
I'm not
So when you get in the way of access, it becomes a huge problem for me.
I'm not disputing that. I'm just talking about, because I understood what Susan Toby was talking about, content and services. I mean, what we're doing at American Airlines is, I mean, I'm not too worried about the way it's formed. It's the content itself that's actually, I think, of interest. Mathematical content. And it could be at different levels. We're thinking about how we diversify the next generation of mathematicians publish our first kids book. And so there are other ways of looking at content in mathematics, not pure research article, traditional journalism.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in that as well. I mean, I think Freemium is really worth taking a look at, but the content itself is still relevant.
Yeah, maybe just on this librarian question, that there's another way of trying to explain. The OECD is an international organization, okay, and there are a lot of other international organizations, some of which are very small, and they don't have much money. When they produce their reports, they stick them on their websites because that's about the best they can do. We get librarians the whole time asking, could we help and get this content into our platform to make it available to the community? Because the librarians know there's a problem. Because their readers come and say, I want to get hold of this, this report from this agency, I can't find it. And so they want the service, because the content is free, sitting on that institution's website, but it can't be found. And they want the service that we provide because of our platform to make that content alive. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of, there's the economic voice of the reader forcing change. Because it comes through via the librarian to me, and I'm knocking on the door of these other international organizations saying, can I help? And that's why I'm talking about, there's the economic voice having a leverage effect. It may not solve it, but it's there, it's present. Because without that, you're not going to get any improvement. As far as that agency is concerned, I've published it, it's free. No problem. But the reader isn't satisfied. And that's the connection I'm trying to make there about the green and gold. It disenfranchises that because there is no leverage to force that other international organization to make a better service.
We are unfortunately over time, but this is a great conversation which can continue over coffee at the break. Thank you all. Thank you to speakers. And thank you so much, John.
My pleasure.
Sorry the Q&A was a bit hard on your end.
There was only one question that I could understand, I think, about from the move from service to product. And to which my answer is indeed yes, we have moved from service to product. Which is perhaps why we're in difficulty.
The PA system was not set up well for this purpose. All right, we gotta sign off as we're changing over to another group. But thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.